The sky above Earth was dark, not because of night, but because of fear. Fear had crept into every corner of the planet, lingering like a shadow that refused to fade. For decades, humanity had looked to the stars with hope, dreaming of meeting other intelligent life forms. But now, those dreams felt more like nightmares. The Krylosians had come, not as friends but as invaders. Their ships hovered high above Earth's atmosphere, sleek and metallic, glowing faintly with an eerie blue light. No one knew why they attacked. They never spoke, never negotiated, never explained. Their weapons were powerful, their technology far beyond anything humans could create. Cities burned, colonies crumbled, and millions died. Yet despite all this destruction, the Krylosians didn't seem interested in conquering Earth. Instead, they struck at random intervals, leaving survivors to pick up the pieces. In the heart of what remained of Seoul, South Korea, Ji-eun Park sat alone in her dimly lit lab. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, typing lines of code into a computer screen filled with strange symbols and graphs. She was young, only 26, but already considered one of the brightest minds in the United Earth Defense Command, UEDC. Her job was to study the Krylosian attacks, searching for patterns or clues that might explain their behavior. So far, she'd found nothing useful. Ji-eun sighed and leaned back in her chair, rubbing her tired eyes. It had been days since she last slept properly. Outside the lab, people whispered about surrender. Some believed it was the only way to stop the bloodshed. Others argued that giving up would mean the end of humanity altogether. Ji-eun didn't know which side she agreed with. All she knew was that she couldn't give up yet. Not when there was still data to analyze, signals to decode, answers to find. "Any progress?" a voice asked from behind her. Startled, Ji-eun turned around to see Mira Cho standing in the doorway. Mira was another scientist working at the UEDC, though her expertise lay in linguistics rather than engineering. She specialized in studying alien languages, trying to translate messages sent by extraterrestrial species. Like Ji-eun, she hadn't slept much lately. "Not really," Ji-eun admitted. "I've gone over the energy signatures from the last attack 5 times already. There's no pattern, no logic. It's like they're just hitting us for fun." Mira frowned. "Oh, that doesn't make sense. Even if they don't care about us, there has to be some reason behind their actions. Aliens are logical creatures, aren't they? They wouldn't waste resources unless they had a goal." Ji-eun shrugged. "Maybe their goal is to drive us crazy." Mira chuckled softly, though there was little humor in her expression. "Well, they're succeeding. Did you hear about Hae-jun Lee's latest report?" Ji-eun shook her head. "No, what happened?" "He thinks we should strike back," Mira said. "He wants to launch a full-scale assault on the Krylosians using whatever weapons we can scavenge from their destroyed ships. He says we can't keep waiting for them to hit us first." Ji-eun frowned. "That's insane. We'd be throwing away everything we've worked for. If we attack them directly, they'll retaliate. And next time, they won't hold back. We're barely surviving as it is." "I agree," Mira said. "But Hae-jun isn't the only one thinking this way. More and more people in the UEDC are starting to support his plan. They think diplomacy is useless." Ji-eun stared at her screen, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. She wanted to believe that peace was still possible, but deep down, she wasn't sure anymore. Every day brought new reports of destruction, new stories of families torn apart. How long could humanity endure this? Her thoughts were interrupted by a sudden beep from her computer. A red alert flashed on the screen, accompanied by a series of numbers and symbols she didn't recognize. Ji-eun leaned forward, her exhaustion forgotten as she focused on the new data. "What is it?" Mira asked, stepping closer. "I'm not sure," Ji-eun murmured. "It looks like a fragment of a signal. Something I haven't seen before." She began running diagnostics, cross-referencing the mysterious code with previous Krylosian transmissions. As the analysis progressed, her heart started pounding faster. Could this be it? Could this finally be the breakthrough she'd been searching for? Minutes passed, then hours. Ji-yeon barely noticed as Mira brought her coffee and sandwiches, urging her to eat. Finally, just as dawn broke over the horizon, Ji-yeon let out a gasp. On the screen was a sequence of symbols unlike any she'd encountered before. It wasn't random noise, it was a message. "Mira, look at this," Ji-yeon exclaimed, pointing at the screen. "This isn't just an energy signature, it's communication. They've been sending us a signal all along." Mira's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" "Yes. Absolutely," Ji-yeon replied. "It's subtle, almost hidden within the chaos of their attacks, but it's there. And if I'm right?" She trailed off, her mind racing with possibilities. "If you're right, what does it say?" Mira pressed. Ji-yeon hesitated. "I don't know yet. That's going to take time to decode. But if we can figure it out, we might finally understand why they're doing this." The two women exchanged a glance, both realizing the significance of Ji-yeon's discovery. For the first time in months, there was a glimmer of hope. Maybe humanity wasn't completely powerless after all. Elsewhere in the command center of the UEDC headquarters, Hae-jun Lee stood staring at a holographic map of Earth. Red dots marked the locations of recent Krylosian attacks, each one representing countless lives lost. His jaw was clenched tightly, his hands balled into fists at his sides. He hated feeling helpless, and right now that's exactly how he felt. Hae-jun was a soldier through and through. At 42, he'd spent most of his life serving Earth's military forces. He'd fought in wars, led troops into battle, and made decisions that weighed heavily on his conscience. But nothing compared to this. Nothing prepared him for facing an enemy he couldn't fight back against. "Sir," a voice called out, breaking his train of thought. Hae-jun turned to see Kyung-soo Kim approaching him. Kyung-soo was a politician, one of the few who still advocated for peaceful solutions. To Hae-jun, he represented everything wrong with humanity's current leadership: hesitation, indecision, weakness. "What do you want?" Hae-jun asked gruffly. "We need to talk about your proposal," Kyung-soo said, gesturing toward the briefing room. "The council wants to hear your reasoning again." Hae-jun scowled. "My reasoning hasn't changed. We can't keep sitting here waiting for them to destroy us. We have to act." "And risk escalating the conflict?" Kyung-soo countered. "If we attack them, they'll respond with even greater force. You know that." "They're already killing us," Hae-jun snapped. "How much worse can it get?" Kyung-soo sighed. "I understand your frustration, Hae-jun. Believe me, I do. But we can't afford to make rash decisions. Not now, not when so much is at stake." Hae-jun opened his mouth to argue further, but stopped himself. Arguing with Kyung-soo was pointless. The man refused to see reality, clinging to his ideals even as the world fell apart around him. Instead, Hae-jun simply nodded curtly and walked away, leaving Kyung-soo standing alone in the command center. As he left, Hae-jun couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Whether the politicians liked it or not, humanity needed to prepare for war, because sooner or later the Krylosians would strike again, and when they did, Earth had to be ready. Ji-yeon Park stared at the screen, her mind racing with possibilities. The mysterious signal she had uncovered was unlike anything humanity had encountered before. It wasn't just random noise or meaningless data, it was communication. The Krylosians were trying to say something, but what? And why had they hidden it so carefully within their attacks? Mira Cho sat beside her, equally engrossed in the strange symbols flashing across the monitor. Together they began piecing together fragments of the message. Combining Ji-yeon's technical expertise with Mira's knowledge of alien languages. Hours turned into days as they worked tirelessly, fueled by coffee and determination. "It's not easy," Mira admitted one evening, rubbing her temples. Their language doesn't follow any known structure. It's almost like poetry. Poetry? Ji-yeon raised an eyebrow. Aliens writing poems? That doesn't make sense. No, listen, Mira said. Think about it. Poetry often uses metaphors and abstract ideas instead of straightforward statements. Maybe the Krelosians are doing the same thing here. They're not explaining themselves directly. They're hinting at their intentions. Ji-yeon frowned. If that's true, then we're dealing with something far more complex than a simple declaration of war. Exactly, Mira replied. But if we can crack this code, we might finally understand why they're attacking us. As the two scientists delved deeper into the signal, they began noticing recurring patterns. Certain symbols appeared repeatedly, forming what seemed to be key phrases. Slowly but surely, they started translating bits and pieces of the message. Meanwhile, tensions continued to rise within the United Earth Defense Command, UEDC. Hae-jun Lee grew increasingly frustrated with the lack of action from Earth's leaders. He believed that every moment spent debating strategy was another moment wasted, time they didn't have. During a heated meeting in the command center, Hae-jun slammed his fist on the table. "We're sitting ducks," he shouted. "Every day we delay, the Krylosians grow stronger. We need to hit them first before they wipe us out completely." Kyung-soo Kim, ever the voice of caution, tried to calm him down. "Attacking them without understanding their motives could lead to disaster. What if they retaliate with even greater force?" "They've already attacked us," Hae-jun shot back. "How much worse can it get?" Kyung-soo sighed. "I understand your anger, Hae-jun, but we must consider the consequences of our actions. If we escalate the conflict, we risk losing everything." Hae-jun glared at him, his frustration boiling over. "You politicians always talk about consequences, but you never think about survival. Sometimes you have to fight to live." The argument ended in a stalemate, leaving both men seething with unresolved tension. As Hae-jun stormed out of the room, Kyung-soo couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. He knew Hae-jun had a point. Earth couldn't keep waiting indefinitely. But rushing into battle without a clear plan would only invite catastrophe. Back in the lab, Ji-eun and Mira finally made a breakthrough. After weeks of painstaking effort, they managed to decode a significant portion of the Krelosian message. What they discovered shocked them to their core. "They don't see us as enemies," Ji-eun whispered, her voice trembling. "They see us as inferior." "Inferior?" Mira echoed, stunned. "What does that mean?" "It means they don't view us as worthy opponents," Ji-eun explained. "To them, we're nothing more than pests, creatures too primitive to deserve coexistence. Their attacks aren't meant to conquer us. They're tests." "Tests for what?" Mira asked. "To see if we're capable of defending ourselves," Ji-eun replied. "If we fail, they'll destroy us. If we succeed—" She trailed off, though unsure how to finish the thought. Mira leaned back in her chair, processing the implications. "So they're judging us, deciding whether we're worth keeping around." "Exactly," Ji-yeon said. "And based on their perspective, we're failing miserably." The revelation weighed heavily on both women. Humanity wasn't fighting a war. It was being evaluated, judged, and found wanting. The realization was humbling, even devastating, but it also offered a glimmer of hope. If the Krylosians were testing them, then perhaps there was still a chance to prove Earth's worth. "We need to tell someone," Mira said urgently. "This changes everything." Ji-yeon nodded. "Let's go to Hae-jun. He needs to hear this." When Ji-yeon and Mira arrived at the UEDC headquarters, they found Hae-jun pacing anxiously in the command center. His face lit up with relief when he saw them. "Did you find something?" he asked immediately. "Yes," Ji-yeon replied. "But you're not going to like it." She proceeded to explain their discovery, outlining the Krylosians' perception of humanity and the purpose behind their attacks. Haijun listened intently, his expression growing darker with each word. "So, they think we're weak," he muttered when she finished. "That's why they keep hitting us, to see if we'll fight back." "Not just fight back," Mira added, "to see if we're capable of standing up to them. If we don't pass their test, they'll annihilate us." Haijun clenched his fists, his mind racing with possibilities. "Then we give them what they want. We show them we're not weak. We hit them harder than they expect." "But how?" Ji-eun asked. "Their technology is far superior to ours, and even if we launch a counterattack, we'll be outnumbered and outgunned." "That's where you come in," Haijun said, turning to her. "You've been studying their signals, analyzing their tech. Can you use that knowledge to level the playing field?" Ji-eun hesitated. "Maybe, but it won't be easy. We'd need access to their ships, their weapon systems." "I can arrange that," Haijun interrupted. "We've salvaged parts from their destroyed vessels. If anyone can reverse engineer their technology, it's you." Ji-eun exchanged a glance with Mira, who nodded encouragingly. "All right," she said finally. "I'll do it, but we'll need time." "You've got 3 days," Haijun replied. "After that, we act." Over the next 72 hours, Ji-eun worked feverishly, dissecting Krylosian components and integrating them into Earth's defenses. With Mira's help, she developed a prototype weapon capable of matching the aliens' firepower. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to give humanity a fighting chance. On the 3rd day, Haijun gathered the UEDC Council for an emergency briefing. Standing before a holographic display of Earth and the surrounding Krylosian fleet, he outlined his plan. "We've decoded their message," he announced. "They're testing us, judging us. If we don't respond, they'll destroy us. But if we show them we're not afraid, we might stand a chance." Kyung-soo frowned. "And what happens if your plan fails? What if they retaliate with overwhelming force?" "Then we die fighting," Haijun replied simply. "At least we'll die with honor." The council debated fiercely, torn between fear and desperation. In the end, they voted in favor of Haijun's proposal. There was no other choice. As the meeting adjourned, Ji-eun approached Haijun. "Are you sure about this?" she asked quietly. "Once we strike, there's no turning back." "I'm sure," Haijun said, his voice steady. "This is our last chance. We have to take it." Ji-eun nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it together. The clock was ticking. 3 days had passed since Hae-Jun Lee presented his plan to the UEDC Council, and now humanity stood on the brink of its most daring operation yet. Ji-Yoon Park worked tirelessly in her lab, fine-tuning the prototype weapon she and Mira Cho had developed using salvaged Krylosian technology. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was Earth's best shot at leveling the playing field. Ji-eun stared at the sleek device resting on her workbench. It looked deceptively simple. A metallic cylinder with glowing blue veins running along its surface. But inside, it housed an unprecedented fusion of human ingenuity and alien engineering. The weapon could emit a pulse capable of disabling Krylosian shields temporarily, giving Earth's forces a critical advantage in battle. "Are you sure this will work?" Mira asked, breaking the silence. She stood nearby, holding a tablet filled with technical data and schematics. "I'm not sure of anything," Ji-Yoon admitted, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "But we don't have time to doubt ourselves. If we wait any longer, they'll attack again, and next time we might not survive." Mira nodded grimly. "Then let's hope it works." Meanwhile, Hae-Jun paced nervously in the command center, reviewing the final details of the operation. His mind raced with scenarios, some hopeful, the others catastrophic. He knew the risks. If their counterattack failed, the Krylosians would crush Earth without mercy, but doing nothing was no longer an option. Kyung-soo Kim entered the room, his expression unreadable. For once, he didn't argue or criticize. Instead, he placed a hand on Hae-jun's shoulder. "You've done all you can," he said quietly. "Now it's up to fate." Hae-jun glanced at him, surprised by the gesture. "I thought you'd still be against this." "I still think diplomacy should come first," Kyung-soo replied. "But I also know that sometimes survival requires sacrifice. Just promise me you won't let anger cloud your judgment out there." Hae-jun hesitated, then nodded. "I'll do my best." As night fell over Earth, the atmosphere grew tense. Soldiers prepared for deployment, mechanics double-checked equipment, and civilians huddled in shelters, praying for victory. In her lab, Ji-eun completed the last adjustments to the weapon. She attached it to a compact control module and handed it to Mira. "This is it," Ji-eun said. "Once activated, the pulse will disable their shields for about 30 seconds. That's all the time you'll have to strike." Mira took the device carefully. "What about you? Aren't you coming with us?" "No," Ji-eun replied. "I need to stay here and monitor the signal. If something goes wrong, I'll guide you remotely." Mira wanted to protest, but realized there was no point. Ji-eun's skills were needed elsewhere. "Just be careful," she said finally. "You too," Ji-eun whispered as Mira turned to leave. The operation began at dawn. A fleet of hybrid spacecraft, part human, part Krylosian, launched into orbit, led by Hae-jun himself. Each ship carried the new weapon, ready to unleash its power at the right moment. As they approached the Krylosian mothership, tension crackled through the air like static electricity. "Stay calm," Hae-jun instructed his crew over the comms. "We only get one shot at this." On the ground, Ji-eun monitored the situation from her lab. Her fingers hovered anxiously over the keyboard as she tracked the enemy's movements. So far, the Krylosians hadn't noticed the approaching fleet. Their arrogance made them predictable, a flaw humanity intended to exploit. "Activate the weapon on my mark," Hae-jun ordered. 3, 2, 1, now! At his command, Mira triggered the prototype device. A blinding flash of blue light erupted from the fleet, enveloping the Krylosian ships. For a brief moment, everything seemed frozen. Then, the aliens' shields flickered and vanished, leaving them vulnerable. "Attack!" Hae-jun shouted. The human fleet surged forward, unleashing a barrage of missiles and energy beams. Explosions lit up the void of space as Krylosian vessels crumbled under the unexpected assault. Cheers erupted among the crew, but Hae-jun remained focused. This was just the beginning. Back in her lab, Ji-eun watched the battle unfold on her screen. Her heart pounded as she analyzed the results. The weapon had worked, but only partially. Some Krylosian ships still retained fragments of their shielding, making them harder to destroy. "They're adapting," Ji-eun muttered to herself. "Faster than I expected." She quickly relayed the information to Hae-jun. "Their shields are regenerating. You need to keep hitting them before they recover." "We're trying," Hae-jun snapped back, his voice strained. "But we're outnumbered." Ji-eun clenched her fists, frustration bubbling inside her. There had to be another way. Scanning the data furiously, she noticed something peculiar. A weak spot in the Krylosian mothership's structure. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it might be enough. "Listen carefully," Ji-eun said urgently. "There's a vulnerability near the core of their mothership. If you can target it directly, you might bring the whole thing down." "How accurate is this intel?" Hae-jun demanded. "It's our only chance," Ji-eun replied. "Trust me." Hae-jun hesitated, then gave the order. "All units, focus fire on the mothership's core. Repeat, aim for the core." The fleet adjusted its trajectory, converging on the massive alien vessel. Missiles and energy blasts pounded the designated area, causing the mothership to shudder violently. Inside, alarms blared as the Chrylosians scrambled to defend themselves. Amidst the chaos, Kyung-Soo Kim made a bold decision. Realizing the operation might fail without reinforcements, he commandeered a shuttle and joined the fight personally. His arrival boosted morale, though many questioned why a politician would risk his life in combat. "I'm not just a politician," Kyung-Soo told the crew aboard his shuttle. "I'm a human being, and today, we stand together." His shuttle dove into the fray, targeting smaller Chrylosian fighters and drawing their attention away from the main fleet. Though inexperienced in warfare, Kyung-Soo proved surprisingly adept at maneuvering the craft. His actions bought precious time for Hae-jun and his team. Finally, after what felt like hours, the Chrylosian mothership began to collapse. Its core destabilized, sending shockwaves rippling through the surrounding ships. One by one, the alien vessels exploded, their glowing blue lights fading into darkness. "We did it!" Hae-jun breathed, slumping back in his seat. "We actually did it!" Cheers erupted across the fleet, but the celebration was short-lived. Humanity had won the battle, but the war was far from over. As the survivors returned to Earth, the reality of their losses sank in. Cities lay in ruins, families mourned their dead, and trust in leadership wavered. In her lab, Ji-eun stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. She had helped save humanity, but at what cost? And the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. Outside, the sky was lighter now, free from the shadow of fear, for now. But Ji-eun couldn't shake the feeling that this victory was temporary. The Chrylosians would return, and when they did, humanity would need to be stronger than ever. The aftermath of the battle left Earth scarred but alive. The Chrylosian fleet had been decimated, their mothership reduced to drifting wreckage in the void of space. Humanity celebrated the victory, but beneath the surface, cracks began to show. Cities lay in ruins, millions were dead or displaced, and trust in global leadership was shattered. The cost of survival weighed heavily on everyone's shoulders. In her lab, Ji-eun Park sat alone, staring at the glowing screens before her. Her mind replayed the events of the past days, the tension, but the explosions, the cheers of triumph. Yet amidst the relief, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. The Chrylosians had underestimated humanity once, but they wouldn't make the same mistake twice. And when they returned, they would bring hell with them. Miracho entered the room quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Ji-eun without saying a word. They both knew there was little to celebrate. Victory felt hollow when so much had been lost. "We need to prepare," Ji-eun said finally, breaking the silence. "This was just a skirmish. Next time they'll come stronger." Mira nodded. "Do you think we can improve the weapon, make it more effective?" "I don't know," Ji-eun admitted. "We used everything we had for this fight. To make something better. And we'd need more resources and more time." "Time is something we might not have," Mira replied grimly. "What if they attack again tomorrow?" Ji-eun didn't answer. She didn't want to consider that possibility, but deep down she knew Mira was right. The Chrylosians weren't known for patience. Their next move could come at any moment. Meanwhile, Hae-jun Lee stood on the edge of a crater where Seoul's central district used to be. The once bustling streets were now a wasteland of rubble and ash. He clenched his fists, anger boiling inside him. For years he had fought to protect Earth, but now he wondered if it was all worth it. How many more lives would be sacrificed before this conflict ended? Kyung-Soo Kim approached him cautiously, his expression somber. "You did what you had to do," he said softly. "No one blames you." "That doesn't matter," Hae-jun snapped. "People are dead because of me. Cities are destroyed because I chose to fight instead of negotiate." "You gave us a chance to survive," Kyung-Soo countered. "If we hadn't acted, none of us would be standing here right now." Hae-jun shook his head. "Survival isn't enough. Not if it costs us our humanity. Kyung-soo sighed. He wanted to argue, to remind Hae-jun that sacrifices were sometimes necessary. But he couldn't deny the truth in Hae-jun's words. The line between heroism and brutality had blurred during the battle, leaving scars that wouldn't heal easily. As news of the victory spread, public opinion became divided. Some hailed Hae-jun and his team as saviors, while others condemned their actions as reckless and unnecessary. Protests erupted in cities around the world, and demanding accountability from those in power. Among the loudest voices was a faction calling themselves the Voice of Peace. They argued that humanity should surrender to the Krylosians rather than risk further destruction. Ji-yeon watched these developments from her lab, feeling increasingly uneasy. "They don't understand," she muttered to Mira. "Surrendering won't save us. It'll only delay the inevitable." "But how do we convince them?" Mira asked. "They're scared. Fear makes people desperate." "We give them hope," Ji-eun replied firmly. "We show them that we're not powerless, that we can stand up to the Krylosians and win." To bolster morale, the UEDC launched a campaign highlighting humanity's ingenuity and resilience. Footage of the battle played across global broadcasts, accompanied by speeches from leaders like Kyung-soo. Despite his earlier hesitation, Kyung-soo embraced his role as a symbol of unity, urging people to rebuild and prepare for whatever came next. Behind the scenes, however, tensions simmered. Kyung-soo faced mounting criticism for his initial reluctance to support Hae-jun's plan. Rumors spread about secret agendas and hidden motives, tarnishing his reputation. Though he tried to ignore the accusations, the weight of public scrutiny began to wear him down. One evening, after a particularly grueling press conference, Kyung-soo found himself sitting alone in his office. He stared at the stack of reports on his desk, each one detailing the losses suffered during the battle. Guilt gnawed at him, whispering that perhaps he had failed as a leader. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. It was Ji-eun holding a small device in her hands. "Well, what is it?" Kyung-soo asked, surprised to see her. "I've been working on something," Ji-eun explained. "A way to communicate directly with the Krylosians. If we can send them a message, something clear and undeniable, we might be able to avoid another war." Kyung-soo frowned. "You think they'll listen?" "I don't know," Ji-eun admitted. "But it's worth a try. Right now they see us as inferior. We need to prove them wrong." Kyung-soo hesitated, then nodded. "All right. What do you need from me?" "Your approval," Ji-eun replied, "and access to the communication array. Without it, I can't transmit the signal." Kyung-soo agreed, though he couldn't shake the feeling that this gamble might backfire. Still, if there was even a slim chance of preventing further bloodshed, it was worth taking. Over the next few days, Ji-yeon worked tirelessly to craft the message. With Mira's help, she translated Earth's ultimatum into the Krylosian language, embedding it within a modified version of their own signals. The message was simple, yet firm. "Stop attacking or we stop pretending to be courteous." When the transmission was ready, Ji-yeon activated the array, sending the signal deep into space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, faintly, a response came, a series of pulses indicating acknowledgement. "They heard us," Ji-yeon whispered, her heart racing. "Now we wait." Hours turned into days as Earth held its breath. The skies remained eerily quiet, devoid of Krylosian ships. People dared to hope that the message had worked, that peace might finally be possible. But Ji-eun knew better. The Krylosians were unpredictable, and their silence could mean anything. Hae-jun shared her unease. Standing on the command deck of the UEDC headquarters, he scanned the horizon, half expecting the aliens to appear at any moment. "Something's wrong," he muttered to Kyung-soo. "They're planning something." Kyung-soo nodded. "I feel it too. But until they act, All we can do is prepare. Preparations intensified as Earth braced for the worst. Factories churned out weapons, shelters were fortified, and volunteers trained for combat. Despite the uncertainty, a sense of determination took root among the survivors. They had faced annihilation and lived to tell the tale. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Finally, the waiting ended. A massive Krylosian fleet emerged from hyperspace, surrounding Earth in a tightening noose. Panic swept through the planet as alarms blared and evacuation orders were issued. In her lab, Ji-Yun monitored the situation, her stomach churning with dread. "They're here," she said over the comms. "Their shields are active, and they're targeting key locations." "Then we fight," Hae-Jun replied grimly. "To the last person if we have to." Kyung-soo joined them on the command deck, his expression resolute. "Let's finish what we started." As the first wave of attacks hit, humanity responded with everything it had. The hybrid fleet launched into orbit once again, armed with upgraded versions of Ji-Yun's weapon. Explosions lit up the sky as Earth fought tooth and nail for its survival. Amidst the chaos, Ji-Yun realized something crucial. The Krylosians weren't just attacking. They were probing, testing humanity's resolve once more. This wasn't a war of conquest. It was a trial by fire. "Hey, show them who we are!" Ji-Yun whispered to herself. "Show them we won't break!" The battle raged on, Earth's skies ablaze with streaks of light and thunderous explosions. Humanity fought with everything it had, its ingenuity, its courage, its sheer will to survive. The Krylosians pressed their attack relentlessly, their ships glowing brighter than ever as they unleashed devastating salvos. Yet for all their power, they seemed uncertain, almost hesitant. It was as if they were waiting for something, or someone, to prove them wrong. In her lab, Ji-Yun Park monitored the chaos unfolding above Earth. Her hands trembled as she adjusted the controls of the communication array, ensuring the signal she had sent earlier continued to broadcast. "Stop attacking, or we stop pretending to be courteous." She hoped the message would reach them again, forcing the Krylosians to reconsider their stance. But deep down, she knew it might not be enough. Mira Cho stood beside her, watching the screens flicker with updates from the battlefield. "How much longer can we hold out?" she asked quietly. "As long as we have to," Ji-Yun replied, though her voice betrayed her doubt. "If we give up now, everything we've done will mean nothing." Mira nodded, gripping the edge of the desk tightly. "Then let's keep fighting." High above Earth, Hae-Jun Lee commanded the hybrid fleet with unwavering determination. His ship rocked violently as Krylosian energy beams struck its hull, but he refused to retreat. Every fiber of his being screamed that this was humanity's last stand, and he wasn't about to let fear dictate his actions. "Focus fire on their lead vessel," Hae-Jun ordered, and his voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms and shouts. "We need to break their formation!" The fleet responded with precision, unleashing a barrage of missiles and energy pulses. One by one, Krylosian ships faltered under the assault, their shields flickering and failing thanks to Ji-Yun's upgraded weapon. But for every enemy ship destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The odds were overwhelming, yet no one wavered. Kyung-Soo Kim, aboard a smaller craft near the front lines, coordinated evacuation efforts while simultaneously engaging enemy fighters. Though inexperienced in combat, his calm demeanor inspired those around him. "Keep moving," he shouted to his crew as their shuttle dodged incoming fire. "We're not done yet." Despite the destruction, Kyung-Soo couldn't help but marvel at humanity's resilience. Ordinary people, scientists, soldiers, civilians, had come together in the face of extinction, proving that survival wasn't just about strength, but unity. For the first time in days, he allowed himself a glimmer of hope. Back on Earth, cities burned, but amidst the ruins, acts of heroism shone like sparks in the darkness. Families sheltered neighbors, engineers repaired damaged defenses, and volunteers risked their lives to save others. Even as the Krylosians tightened their grip, humanity refused to surrender. Ji-eun watched these scenes unfold on security feeds connected to her lab. Tears streamed down her face as she saw strangers risking everything for one another. "This is who we are," she whispered. "Not weak, not inferior, human." Her thoughts turned to the Krylosians. What did they see when they looked at Earth? Did they truly believe humanity was unworthy of coexistence? Or had they simply underestimated the power of compassion, creativity, and determination? Suddenly, an alert flashed on her screen. A massive energy surge emanated from the Krylosian mothership, dwarfing anything they had encountered before. Ji-eun's heart sank. "They're preparing a final strike," she said over the comms. "Everyone, brace yourselves." Hae-jun heard her warning and immediately relayed it to the fleet. "Evasive maneuvers, protect the planet at all costs." The Krylosian mothership unleashed its payload, a colossal beam of energy aimed directly at Earth. The sight froze everyone in place. If it hit, there would be no survivors. But then something unexpected happened. Just as the beam reached its peak intensity, it sputtered and died. The mothership itself began to destabilize, its surface cracking and erupting with internal explosions. Within moments, the entire vessel collapsed into a fiery wreck, taking countless Krylosian ships with it. What just happened?" Mira stammered, staring at the screens in disbelief. Ji-eun scanned the data furiously, searching for answers. Then she found it. A faint trace of her original signal embedded within the Krylosian systems. Somehow, her message had triggered a fatal flaw in their technology, causing their own weapons to turn against them. "We did it," Ji-eun breathed, collapsing into her chair. "We actually did it." As the remaining Krylosian ships retreated into the void, silence fell over Earth. For the first time in months, the skies were clear. People emerged from shelters cautiously, blinking in the sunlight as if seeing it for the first time. Cheers erupted across the globe, echoing through shattered streets and broken buildings. Hae-jun stepped onto the deck of his ship, gazing at the horizon. Smoke still rose from the ruins below, but beyond it lay the promise of renewal. He felt a pang of guilt, for the lives lost, for the choices made, but also a sense of pride. Humanity had endured. Kyung-soo joined him, his expression weary but hopeful. "It's over," he said softly. "For now." Hae-jun nodded. "Let's rebuild, together." In her lab, Ji-eun sat alone, reflecting on everything that had transpired. The victory was bittersweet. Millions had died, cities lay in ruins, and trust in global leadership was fractured. Yet, despite all the pain, humanity had proven its worth, not just to the Krylosians, but to itself. She thought about the future. Would the Krylosians return? Perhaps. But if they did, humanity would be ready. They had learned valuable lessons about strength, sacrifice, and unity, and they had earned something far greater than survival: respect. As Ji-eun stared at the stars, she wondered if peace was truly possible. Could humans and Krylosians coexist someday? Or was this merely the beginning of a larger galactic conflict?